It started like any other day. Blue skies, open road, not a single cloud threatening to mess up anyone's playlist. The highway was mostly quiet, just the occasional roar of a motorcycle or the distant hum of 18-wheelers carrying who knows what across state lines. You know those long stretches of road that feel like time just forgets about them. That was this place, until it wasn't, because right around 2:37 p.m., something happened that flipped the vibe from summer road trip to wait, is this a deleted scene from a Marvel movie? A biker was cruising solo down the road. Nothing flashy, just a matte black motorcycle, dusty boots, and a camo jacket that looked like it had seen some stories. Helmet on, visor down, and no plates on the bike. Now, look, that alone isn't exactly code red. But for two highway patrol officers parked in their cruiser and halfway through an argument about who makes the best chicken sandwich in town, it was enough to flip the switch. Sirens on, tires screech, game on. They pulled the biker over like they'd just spotted a wanted fugitive. One officer approached the bike, hand hovering near his holster like he was in a Western standoff. The other stayed back, calling it in. But here's the thing, the biker, he didn't move. He just sat there, totally calm. Engine still humming, hands on the handlebars, not even a flinch. Which, let's be honest, already sends a weird vibe. Like, who doesn't look at a cop and at least pretend to be nervous? But this guy, nothing, zilch. It's like the cop wasn't even there. Now, this is where things start to shift from routine traffic stop to, yo, what is happening right now? The officer asks for ID. Still no movement. Then slowly the biker turns his head, real slow, like a horror movie reveal, and lifts his visor. Underneath, just a calm, steady pair of eyes that looked too composed, like the kind of composed you don't get unless you've stared death in the face and made it flinch. And then, boom, that's when the call came through. The radio on the cop's shoulder crackled to life, static, then a voice urgent, but it wasn't dispatch, it wasn't local enforcement, it wasn't even state troopers. It was a military channel. Unit Charlie 7, stand down, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. The officer froze. How the hell did the biker's traffic stop get picked up by a military frequency? The second cop looked up from the squad car, his eyes wide. This wasn't just weird anymore. This was way above their pay grade, and they knew it. Before they could even react, a rumble started to shake the ground. At first, they thought it was a semi rolling in. But then, over the hill, came the sound of engines, big ones, not the diesel growl of truckers, but the thunderous roar of something heavier, something military, and then they saw them, 1, 2, 5, 10, more and more military Humvees pouring down the road, tires kicking up dust, sunlight bouncing off the armored shells, 50 of them, easy, full convoy, fully armed, no warning, no explanation, and at the front, a Humvee rolled up, stopping inches from the squad car. The door flung open and out stepped a woman in full fatigues, captain's insignia on her chest, boots hitting the pavement like thunderclaps. She walked past the cops like they didn't even exist and headed straight for the biker. She didn't salute, didn't speak, just made eye contact. The kind of eye contact that says, "You good?" And the biker, he nodded once, just once. Then everything moved fast. The biker swung his leg over the bike, kicked down the stand, and walked toward the captain. The two exchanged a few quiet words that no one else could hear. The soldiers didn't budge. They stood guard like this was a full-blown extraction mission, which it probably was. The cops still frozen. Mouths slightly open. No idea what they just walked into. And honestly, same. What kind of biker needs 50 armed soldiers to show up just because he got pulled over? Who is this guy? What was he carrying? Was he military, black ops, a rogue agent, a test subject? Okay, maybe that's a bit much, but come on. You've seen enough Netflix to know this is not normal. Now, if you're wondering why the captain didn't just tell the cops what was going on, you're not alone. But she did say one thing, just one. As she turned to the stunned officers, she said calmly, "You stopped the wrong bike. Next time, check your clearance level." And that was it. They got in their vehicles. The convoy turned around, dust clouds in their wake, and the biker, he didn't ride off. He climbed into one of the Humvees like he was done playing civilian. The convoy disappeared just as fast as it had arrived. The cops were left alone on that empty highway. No explanations, no paperwork, no evidence the whole thing even happened. Except for the tire tracks and the lingering smell of diesel fuel, what just happened? Let's rewind for a second. How does a random guy on a motorcycle end up with military protection like he's a national asset? Why did the army move so fast? How did they know exactly where he was? And why did they show up with that much force? Who needs 50 soldiers for one biker? And here's another twist. What if that wasn't protection at all? What if it was containment? Yeah, think about that. Because there's a theory, more like internet legend, that sometimes ex-military operatives are released back into civilian life with certain conditions, like they are not fully off duty, like they still belong to someone. And if they get flagged, boom, containment unit activated. No questions, no time wasted. So was this biker dangerous? Or was he important? Or maybe both? See, stories like these don't show up on the news. You'll never hear about it on CNN, but every now and then, someone captures a blurry photo or drops a cryptic Reddit post, and the rest of us are left with goosebumps and questions. And here's where it gets wilder. Someone did post about this. A gas station clerk a few miles up the road said a guy in Como filled up his tank an hour before the stop. Said he paid in cash, barely spoke, and had some kind of scar down his neck, like surgical scar. Deep, military deep. Another person claimed they saw a similar convoy near the Nevada border last year. Same number of vehicles, same formation, no plates, no insignia, just that eerie silence that follows trained soldiers when they're on a mission that doesn't officially exist. Coincidence, maybe, but maybe not. And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but this could totally be fake. Well, maybe, but tell me this. Why did 2 local cops go completely silent about it afterward? Why was their dashcam footage never released? Why did their report just say traffic stop resolved, no action taken? And more importantly, who was that biker? What if he wasn't just military? What if he was part of something else? A secret program, a classified unit, something they don't even name anymore. Or what if he was something they created? Okay, maybe that's a little sci-fi. But don't pretend your brain didn't just go there for a second. Because here's the thing. We live in a world where crazy stuff happens every day. And most of us are too busy scrolling or stressing or stuck in traffic to notice it. But sometimes, just sometimes, reality peeks out from behind the curtain and shows us something we weren't meant to see. And when that happens, you better believe the system moves fast to put the curtain back in place. So now we're in it. This isn't just about one biker. It's about secrets, about power, about how far the government, or someone, will go to protect whatever truth they're hiding. And trust me, it's only the beginning. You ever hear the phrase, the quiet ones are the ones to watch? Well, turns out, the quiet ones sometimes carry national secrets on the back of a motorcycle and get tracked by enough military firepower to start a small war. But here's the thing, we're not just talking about some random loner on a Harley. No, this guy, he had a past, a coded, redacted, locked behind, clearance, levels kind of past. And as the convoy disappeared over the horizon that day, kicking up more questions than dust, the small town they passed through was left with a story no one would believe, and a handful of people who saw just enough to never forget it. Let's rewind, not to the highway, but to 6 months earlier, a military base in the Arizona desert, One so far off the grid it doesn't even show up on Google Earth. You know the kind with fences that warn you to keep out. Not for your safety, but for theirs. Inside this base, tucked behind 3 security gates, biometric scanners, and guards trained to not smile at birthday cake, was a division known only as Unit Echo. Ever heard of it? No, good. That means it's working. Unit Echo wasn't your average squad of soldiers. These weren't rookies learning to march in sync. These were specialists, ghosts, men and women who had gone into war zones the rest of the world denied existed. Operatives trained not just to fight, but to disappear, to blend, to leave no trace, and among them was a name that kept popping up in confidential files: Ryder Maddox, former Army, Special Tactics, decorated 5 times but promoted only once. Why? Because Ryder didn't follow orders. He followed results. He was the guy you called when diplomacy failed, when tech glitched, and when your top agents were too afraid to go in. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, and he sure as hell didn't ask for backup. But he got things done until, one day, he disappeared, vanished off the grid, no resignation, no court-martial, no body, just a 2-sentence memo in a red folder: operative withdrawn from active status, monitoring protocol engaged, fast, forward to the highway again. The reason the military moved so fast, they'd been watching Ryder for months, not because they were worried about him. Well, not entirely. It was because whatever Ryder knew wasn't supposed to be out in the world. There were rumors, unconfirmed of course, that he was involved in something called Project Silo. And no, we're not talking about farming equipment. We're talking about high-level neural combat tech, artificial intelligence, human augmentation, stuff that makes Iron Man look like a Lego set. And apparently, Ryder had something in his head, or his blood, or maybe both. Crazy, right, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Back in that dusty town, a mechanic named Lucas had his life turned upside down without even knowing it. Lucas was just your average dude. Grease on his jeans, radio always playing 80s rock, and a passion for rebuilding engines no one cared about anymore. About 3 weeks before the highway incident, Ryder had rolled his bike into Lucas's shop, said he needed a new carburetor and a quiet place to rest, paid in cash, didn't give a name, but Lucas remembered those eyes. Everyone who met Ryder remembered the eyes, calm, sharp, but like haunted. Lucas tried to make small talk. You know, where you riding from? Nice jacket. Ever consider getting plates? But Ryder wasn't the chatting type. He just nodded, drank black coffee, and worked on the bike with him in silence. The whole vibe was off, but not in a threatening way, more like, this dude has seen stuff, and he's trying to stay invisible. Funny thing is, Lucas had cameras in his shop. Not because he was paranoid, but because the town had a bad habit of teenagers trying to tag the garage door with art. But the day after Ryder left, the footage from that entire week. Gone, corrupted, not missing, scrambled, like someone had taken the footage and fed it through a digital blender. Even the tech guy Lucas called to fix it gave up and said, "Dude, did the CA stop by or something?" No joke. Now remember that gas station clerk we mentioned in part 1. Turns out, she didn't just see Ryder fill up. She also saw a black SUV parked across the street with tinted windows. And every time Ryder moved, so did the SUV. Like it was waiting, watching. She thought it was just some creeps following him, maybe trying to rob him later. But 2 days after the incident, she found a small listening device under her register. Yeah, that escalated fast. So who's watching who? The internet started buzzing. A Reddit thread titled "Motorcycle Man Triggers Military Panic" started gaining traction. Eyewitnesses described Humvees, soldiers with no name tags, and radio silence across all public emergency channels during the event. Then came the theory dumps. Conspiracy YouTubers were foaming at the mouth. Some said Ryder was a test subject for next Gen combat implants. Others swore he had intel on extraterrestrial contact. One guy claimed he was the missing link between MKUltra and modern AI warfare. Okay, that one might have been written from a basement at 3 a.m., but still, the theories kept growing. Meanwhile, back in D.C., a briefing was held in a room with no windows and more security than a nuclear facility. A man in a dark suit, no name, just a file, slammed his hand on the table, who let Ryder slip past Protocol 9. Nobody answered, because the thing is, no one really knew. See, they didn't track Ryder through phone calls or GPS. That wouldn't work. He didn't carry a phone, no smart tech, not even a watch. The way they tracked him, thermal signature, yep. Ryder's body emitted a thermal pattern that didn't match standard human output. A side effect of something done to him during Project Silo, and that signature had just pinged near the highway for the first time in over a year. So why pull him over? Why risk the exposure? They didn't plan to. The cops who stopped him, totally unaware, just unlucky. The moment they turned on their lights, a protocol launched behind the scenes. A military AI flagged the situation as critical containment breach and dispatched the unit automatically. No phone call, no approval, just full send. So what was Ryder doing there in the first place? That's the real question. Some say he was heading to a safe house. Others think he was going rogue, trying to expose whatever was done to him. But here's what we know for sure. Ryder wasn't running. He was waiting, and that means he wanted to be seen. Why? Think about it. If you spend your life in the shadows, and suddenly you break cover in the loudest way possible, there's a reason. Maybe he's sending a message. Maybe someone's clock is ticking. Or maybe he's done hiding, and here's where it gets chilling. A week after the highway incident, a warehouse on the edge of Nevada caught fire. Fire department said it was electrical. Locals say they saw black trucks arrive the night before. Surveillance footage wiped again, and guess who one witness claimed he saw? A guy in a camo jacket, riding a matte black motorcycle. Coincidence? Come on. You know better by now. So where's Ryder now? No one knows for sure. But traces of that thermal signature have popped up in 3 different states in the past 10 days. Always near isolated towns. Always just long enough for someone to catch a glimpse. And then, gone. But here's what really messes with your head. What if Ryder's not alone? What if there are others? What if he's not the only operative who slipped the leash? What if he's trying to find them? We're just scratching the surface. Because if Ryder's mission didn't end when he vanished, it's still happening right now. Off grid, off record, and right under our noses. So next time you're on the highway and see a lone biker, no plates, camo jacket, visor down, you might want to just keep driving. Not because he's dangerous, but because you're not supposed to know who he is. If Ryder Maddox was just a man on a motorcycle, this would have been a short story. But nah, this rabbit hole, it goes deep. Like black sites, classified files, top-level clearance. Deep. And now it's time to talk about the one thing everyone's whispering about online, but no one can confirm. Project Silo. Ever heard of it? No. Perfect. That means they're doing their job, or they were. Until Ryder decided to blow the lid off it with nothing but 2 wheels and a bad attitude. So let's break it down. Back in 2013, while most of us were watching Breaking Bad and arguing about whether the dress was blue and black or white and gold, something quiet was happening deep in the Nevada desert. A private military contractor, known only in files as Action, was awarded a contract worth over $680 million. The line item, Advanced Human Performance Research and Tactical Field Integration. That's government speak for, let's turn soldiers into superheroes without making it obvious. Now here's where it gets real sketchy. Action didn't operate out of a fancy Pentagon suite or a D.C. think tank. Their headquarters were buried under what appeared to be an abandoned missile silo. Hence, Project Silo, clean cover, hidden location, absolute control, but the real twist, they weren't just building tech. They were building people, not robots, not clones, real humans, enhanced. Now, this wasn't some Captain America serum situation. There were no glowing blue vials, no shield throwing. What they were doing was far more terrifying. They used neurochemical stimulation, microchip-assisted reflex recalibration, and something called biosynaptic mapping. Fancy terms, yay. But here's the translation: they rewired brains. They trained human bodies to respond faster than thought, synced to AI systems that learned from each subject's muscle memory. They didn't create better soldiers. They created faster, smarter predators. Guess who was their most successful subject? Yup, Ryder Maddox, codename Echo 1. He wasn't the first. There were others, Echo 2 through Echo 6, but none of them lasted. One suffered a neural collapse. Another turned violent during a simulation and had to be terminated. Whatever that means, the files are full of redacted lines and vague death reports. Ryder, he passed every test, outperformed drone systems in hand-to-hand combat simulations, could disassemble and reassemble a standard issue M4 in under 5 seconds. He even beat a combat AI in a strategy scenario that was considered unsolvable. But here's the thing no one expected. He started asking questions. Ryder was smart, not book smart, but battlefield smart. He wasn't just absorbing what they gave him. He was analyzing it, watching the tech, watching the staff, figuring out who was really in charge. And the moment he realized the missions they were prepping him for had nothing to do with defense and everything to do with elimination, something snapped. There's one recovered journal entry from a whistleblower who used to be part of the program. It reads, Echo 1 showed signs of moral resistance. Not fear, not confusion, just defiance. He knows he's being used. He's starting to resist the code. And just like that, he vanished. Now here's where it gets absolutely bananas. Project Silo didn't report his disappearance to the government. They didn't alert local agencies. They didn't even file an internal alert for 72 hours. Why? Because they were scared, not of Ryder hurting people, but of what he might say, what he might expose, the kind of exposure that could send entire departments into congressional hearings and drag buried secrets into the public eye. And here's the worst part. They weren't tracking him through tech anymore. They couldn't, because Ryder had disabled every biometric monitor in his system. Except one, the thermal marker. That faint, almost invisible heat pattern his body gave off as a result of the neural modifications. That's all they had left, and even that signal was unreliable until he reappeared near that highway. So you gotta ask yourself, why now? Why, after nearly a year in the wind, does Ryder suddenly pop back up just long enough to trigger a military-level alert? Some say he was trying to get caught, but others, those who really dig into conspiracy forums and redacted files, they think he was testing the response time, measuring the system, seeing how fast they'd come for him and in what numbers. Like he was setting up a chessboard for something bigger. And here's where things go from weird to chilling. 2 weeks after that convoy incident, a data leak hit a small dark web server. Just a few files, buried behind encryption so tight it made NSA tools sweat. But once it cracked, what it showed made one thing very clear. Ryder hadn't just escaped. He had downloaded data before he left. Neural blueprints, mission logs, field testing results, even internal communications between action scientists that hinted at unauthorized experimentation. Yeah, they weren't just building super soldiers. They were trying to sell the blueprint. To who? Well, that's where the trail goes cold. But it wasn't the U.S. military. That much was obvious. These files referenced bidders in Europe, Asia, even unlisted shell companies based in countries known for, let's just say, shady biological research. The point is, Ryder wasn't just running to save himself, he was running with evidence. He was trying to stop something, and here's something almost nobody knows. In one of the logs, dated just 3 days before he went AWOL, a supervisor mentions a test gone wrong. One of the echo subjects went missing inside the facility for over 4 hours. No cameras tracked his movement. No alarms tripped. The report ends with the line, "Containment unsuccessful, subject self-terminated, Echo 1 witnessed event." Translation: Ryder saw something. Something so bad it made the most advanced soldier the government ever built walk away. Now, how the hell do you stop a guy who is trained to be unstoppable? You don't, you wait, you follow, you set traps, but you do not try to take him head on, which is exactly why they rolled out the convoy instead of drones or missiles. They weren't coming to arrest him, they were coming to contain him, quietly, controlled, make it look like a recovery mission instead of a cover-up. But Ryder was always 2 steps ahead. And here's the latest update. A retired CA analyst recently came forward anonymously in an encrypted message posted to a private forum. He said he recognized Ryder, not just from Echo 1 files, but from a mission 10 years ago in a remote part of Eastern Europe. A mission that was officially classified unsuccessful. No details, no casualties reported. But this analyst said the real outcome. Ryder saved a town from complete annihilation after a biological weapon broke containment. That was the first time they tested the tech in real life, and it was the first time Ryder disobeyed orders. He saved the people. The military wanted the place sanitized. And from that moment on, Ryder was no longer a soldier. He was a liability, so now, here we are, a rogue operative, a buried project, a military, industrial contractor willing to sell human augmentation to the highest bidder, and a man riding state to state, trying to keep the truth from falling into the wrong hands. If that doesn't sound like a blockbuster movie, I don't know what does. But this isn't fiction, not all of it anyway. Somewhere out there, Ryder's still moving, watching, listening, maybe building a case. Maybe building something else. And the people who created him, they're still looking. But here's the kicker. Ryder may not be hiding anymore. He may be recruiting. Because if he's trying to stop the rise of enhanced warfare, he can't do it alone. And that convoy, that might not have been a rescue mission. It might have been a warning. So the next time someone tells you they saw a biker pass through their town, no tags, military gear, and a stare that cuts through lies, maybe don't laugh. Maybe listen. Because Ryder Maddox might be out there, rewriting the rules of warfare and justice with nothing but grit, secrets, and a gut full of defiance. And if you're wondering where this story goes next, oh, you haven't seen anything yet. Beneath 300 feet of concrete, steel, and government lies, sat a place they never meant anyone to remember. The entrance didn't look like much, just a rusted elevator shaft at the back of what used to be a weapons storage depot. No signs, no guards, not even a locked gate. But that was the point. If you found it, you weren't meant to walk back out. The place, Silo 9. Not a nickname, not a code name. That was the real designation. No one outside a level 7 clearance had access. Not even the Pentagon had a full blueprint. It wasn't on paper. It wasn't on servers. It was legend. And that's where Ryder Maddox was reborn. You ever feel chills when you walk into a room that's just too quiet? Like the walls themselves are holding their breath. That's the kind of silence Silo 9 specialized in. It didn't hum, it didn't buzz, it just existed, out of time, out of sight, and full of things that no one dared name. The few photos that ever leaked showed blank corridors, bright lights, and a medical wing that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi horror flick. Long steel tables, restraints, thick glass walls, oh, and a hallway with no doors. Just biometric scanners every 10 feet. No one ever confirmed what that hallway led to, but Ryder knew, because he'd been there, he'd been everywhere in that place, and what he saw, that's what broke him. Let's rewind the clock to the final days of Project Silo before it officially ceased operations. A phrase that's government, speak for burn the evidence. Ryder was already the top operative by then. He had completed over a dozen unacknowledged missions, targets neutralized, hostages recovered, weapons destroyed, but during those months, something shifted. He started to notice the silence wasn't just outside, it was inside the people too. The doctors stopped making eye contact. The techs started whispering in break rooms. And late one night, while monitoring a test session from his quarters, Ryder received an unauthorized audio feed. He never figured out who sent it. File was labeled Echo 3 Containment Room 7 Final. He almost didn't press play. Almost. The first 30 seconds were just breathing. Shaky, ragged breathing. Then came the voice, male, mid-30s, desperate. I told them it hurts. I told them it burns. I can't stop seeing them. Then came static. Then screaming, not pain screaming. The kind that comes when your own mind starts turning against you. They're in my head. They put them in my head. The voice yelled. And just before the feed cut out, there was a faint whisper from someone else. Don't look in his eyes. That was Echo 3, the third operative in the enhancement sequence. According to the official file, he died of surgical complications. But now Ryder knew he went mad. The augmentation hadn't just made Echo 3 faster or stronger. It had opened something in his brain, a door, and whatever walked through that door didn't leave quietly. Ryder dug deeper, late nights, unauthorized data access. He wasn't trying to escape then. He was trying to understand, and what he found was worse than he ever imagined. Silo 9 had been conducting side experiments, not just neurological tuning, but sensory expansion. They were trying to create sixth sense operatives, soldiers who could sense threat and violence before it happened. The science was based on something called precognitive pattern mapping. Basically, they were reprogramming the human brain to run predictive calculations faster than any supercomputer. But there was a side effect. If the subject's mind became too sensitive, they began to interpret every emotion as danger. Even empathy, even love. Ryder, read the logs. Echo 3 killed 3 handlers when one of them hugged him. No weapons, just his bare hands and a scream that shattered light fixtures. After that, the hallway with no doors. That's where they kept what was left of him. And that hallway stayed sealed until the night Ryder walked into it. No one knows how he bypassed the bio locks. Some say his enhancements gave him command access. Others believe someone on the inside wanted him to see what was behind that final door. When it opened, the air hit him like ice. The room was dark, lit only by the soft green pulse of machinery keeping something alive. Or half alive. Ryder never told anyone what he saw inside. But when he walked out, he didn't go back to his room. He went to the weapons locker, deactivated his tracker, and disappeared into the night. You see, Ryder didn't just run because he was scared. He ran because he saw what he might become. Because whatever they were doing in Silo 9, it wasn't about protecting freedom or building better defense systems. It was about control, it was about obedience, it was about turning humans into machines that never said no. And the second you couldn't be controlled, you were locked in a box. So why didn't they destroy Silo 9 after he escaped? Well, they tried. 2 months after Ryder vanished, a chemical fire was reported in the Nevada desert. Local news said it was just a fuel explosion, but satellite images showed more than smoke. They showed impact craters, black scorch marks, and a fleet of unmarked helicopters circling for over 12 hours. Whatever was in that place didn't go down quietly, and not everything was destroyed, because 3 weeks later, whispers started popping up on deep web forums. Users posting strings of numbers, strange symbols, and one repeating phrase, "Silo breathes, Creepy, right, but it gets worse. A former Action employee, now living off grid, posted anonymously about a safe system embedded in the echo subjects. A sort of digital tether. If any of them went rogue, it would activate, not to kill them, but to track and observe not just their location, but their thoughts, their choices, their fears. So here's the question. What if Ryder never really escaped? What if they let him run? What if everything we're seeing now, his highway appearance, the soldiers, the convoy, it's all part of the experiment? One final test, one last mission. A test not of strength, but of will. And here's the scariest part of all. Ryder might not be the only one left. There were 6 Echo operatives in total. Only Ryder's status is known. The others, missing, dead, or worse, still active, operating in places no one watches, following commands they can't even remember accepting. Silent weapons waiting for a war that hasn't been declared yet. And Ryder, he might be the only one trying to stop it. But he's outnumbered, outgunned, and on a clock. So now, wherever he is, every step he takes, every town he passes, every face he trusts, it could be a trap, and he knows it, but he's still moving, because somewhere, hidden inside all this madness, is a key. A flaw in the system, something they missed when they tried to build the perfect soldier. And Ryder's going to use it to burn Silo 9 to the ground, unless they find him first. For weeks after the highway incident, Ryder stayed in motion. Not running, not hiding, moving with purpose, like a chess piece sliding across a board no one else could see. He avoided cameras, steered clear of cities, and stuck to old supply routes he'd memorized years ago, back when he still believed in the mission. But what Ryder didn't know was that something, or someone, was watching from the shadows, not the military, not Action, not another tracker drone screaming across the desert sky. This was older, quieter, and more personal. 300 miles outside of Cheyenne, Ryder stopped for fuel. A run-down gas station with one working pump and a vending machine that hadn't been stocked since Obama's first term. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour where the world feels still enough to catch its breath. As Ryder refilled his tank, he caught a flicker of motion in the side mirror. Not movement exactly, a presence. He turned, slow, hand instinctively brushing the holster on his hip. And that's when he saw him. At first, Ryder thought it was a ghost. The man standing by the dumpster was wearing standard tissue combat boots, a desert fatigue jacket with no name tag, and eyes that Ryder recognized instantly. Eyes he hadn't seen since Helmand Province 7 years ago. Eyes that belonged to someone who died in a classified explosion and was buried without a coffin. Ray, Ryder said, barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move. Then, after what felt like forever, he nodded. Ray Danton, Echo 4, thought dead, burned in the failed Afghanistan extraction mission that had been wiped from the history books and written off as collateral loss. Ryder had mourned him, carried his name in silence, but now he was standing there alive or something close to it. Didn't think they'd let you live. Ryder muttered, stepping closer. They didn't, Ray said. His voice was different. Lower, like it had been pushed through a grinder and stitched back together. Ryder noticed the scar along the side of Ray's neck. Jagged, surgical. The kind you only get when someone goes digging into parts of the brain you're not supposed to touch. Ryder reached for his sidearm, not to draw, but to feel the weight, a grounding reflex, a way of reminding himself this was real. They told me you died in containment, Ryder said. The fire, the shutdown, all of it. Ray gave a dry laugh. Yeah, that was the plan, until I didn't. He looked different, more mechanical in posture, like his bones moved in patterns he hadn't chosen, like something had rewired him for efficiency at the cost of humanity. But his eyes were still his. Buried beneath all that damage, the man Ryder had fought beside still lived. Why show yourself now? Ryder asked. Ray hesitated, then walked past him toward the edge of the station. He pulled out a small object from his jacket. Ryder tensed, but it wasn't a weapon. It was a chip, metallic, slightly scorched, a neural data plug. They're reactivating the program, Ray said. Silo 9 was just the prototype. There's another site, bigger, deeper, already operational. The others, Echo 2, Echo 5. They're not dead. They're being rebuilt. Ryder's heart dropped. He had always suspected Action hadn't shut the project down completely. You don't spend billions engineering a new breed of soldier and just walk away. But this was confirmation. Racer, Viver, Escapee, maybe even test subject, was living proof the nightmare hadn't ended. It had only evolved. They're calling it Project Halo. Ray continued. Hybrid adaptive learning operatives. Echo was just the training wheels. Now they're moving fast. No approval, no oversight. Just full control, full domination. Ryder stared at the chip in Ray's hand. What's on that? Everything, design files, activation codes, fail, safe triggers, and one more thing, your shutdown protocol. Ryder blinked. Mine, Ray nodded. They knew you'd survive, that you'd go rogue. They built something into your neural map, a dormant kill code. It hasn't been triggered yet, but they're close. For the first time in years, Ryder felt cold in his bones. What do they want? He asked. Ray looked out into the dark. You, or what's inside you, and if they can't get it, they'll burn everything around you until you hand it over. The wind picked up, dry and sharp against the gas station lights. Ryder's thoughts spun. He had escaped to destroy the system, but now the system was expanding, growing behind his back, using new shells, new names, and the same old playbook. Worse, it had planned for his betrayal from the start. He wasn't off grid. He was on a leash, one they hadn't yanked yet, but they would. You can't fight them alone, Ray said, his voice lower now, almost broken. I tried. I lasted 4 months before they caught me. I escaped again, but it's a countdown. They're in my head, Rye. I hear them sometimes, even now. Ryder stepped closer. We end it. Now, all of it. Ray handed him the chip. There's a facility in Montana. Off books, deep terrain. You'll need 2 weeks and full blackout to get there. If you go in, you won't come back out unless it's finished. Ryder pocketed the chip and looked his old brother in the eye. I don't plan on leaving. They didn't shake hands. Soldiers like them didn't do goodbyes anymore. Ray vanished back into the night, his silhouette swallowed by the desert. And Ryder. He finished fueling his bike, mounted up, and stared out into the highway. A facility, a new name, a new threat, but same war. The next morning, military chatter lit up briefly, thermal trace located near a small Wyoming road. But by the time boots hit the ground, he was gone. Again, but not aimless this time. He had a target. A new site meant new tech, a growing army, and maybe even the key to freeing the other Echo operatives, if they weren't too far gone. If they weren't already shells like Ray. Haunted, twisted, used. But even in that hopelessness, Ryder carried something else now. A chance, a slim, fragile shot to take down the very system that built him. Because for all their experiments, their tests, and their codes, they forgot one thing. Ryder still had choice. They programmed obedience, but they underestimated one human glitch they could never fully control. Conscience. And that's exactly what was going to burn their next facility to the ground. The Montana mountains weren't supposed to hold secrets. Just pine trees, old logging trails, and silence. But deep inside one of those peaks, Ryder Maddox stood face to face with the nightmare that created him. It wasn't just a lab this time. It was a factory. A hive, rows of empty pods, tubes still warm, neural maps etched into holograms. They weren't just making soldiers here. They were making replacements, not of him, of us. Every step Ryder took deeper into the heart of the facility, he saw what action had truly become. Not just an off-book project, but a machine feeding on fear, technology, and ambition. This wasn't about winning wars anymore. It was about creating a version of humanity that didn't question orders, that didn't resist, that didn't think. They called it Project Halo, but there was nothing holy about it. And in the center of it all, behind bulletproof glass, he saw them, Echo 2, Echo 5, Echo 6, still breathing, still wired into the system. But when one of them turned their head and looked at Ryder, eyes dull, mouth silent, he saw a flicker, just for a second, like a spark under wet ash. They remembered. The shutdown codes Ray had given him were real. Ryder uploaded them, one by one, manually overriding every firewall, burning the system from the inside out. Alarms screamed, lights stuttered, doors hissed, and for a moment, just a moment, he felt free. But freedom has a price. The failsafe triggered, explosives locked to neural beacons. He had minutes. He looked at the screen one last time, not to check data, but to look into the eyes of the soldier they tried to erase. And he said only one thing: never again. The screen blinked to black, and the mountain burned. News outlets called it a seismic event. A minor quake, no casualties, nothing to investigate. But a few hikers reported something strange before the ground shook. A low hum, like a machine shutting down for good. Ryder was never found. But 1 month later, a package arrived at a small, off-grid garage in Arizona. No return address, just a burner phone inside and one file, encrypted, titled, "Silo is dead, but we are not." And attached was a list of 7 names, 7 people who knew what really happened. 7 people who weren't just survivors, they were witnesses. The resistance had begun. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. You just walked through a story that was never supposed to exist. You followed a man who was never meant to live. You heard the whispers of a system designed to erase truth. And you saw what happens when someone says enough. But here's the real question: what would you do? If the system turned against you, would you obey? Or would you ride? If this story moved you, made your heart race, made you question everything, then you already know what to do. Hit that like button, tap subscribe, share this with someone who still believes in freedom. Because stories like this, they're more than entertainment, they're warnings, and sometimes, they're the only things that keep the fire alive. Until next time, stay sharp, stay human, and don't trust the silence.